Python programming. We are going to use Python programming language to run data science in data analytics application. I think I had the discussion there. Maybe someone asking, is this a really beginner course? Is it an advanced course? So to answer that one, I can basically say that we want to cater for everyone. Maybe you've never done any programming before, but you have an interest in data science, artificial intelligence. This should be something you can try out. Or maybe you had already started, but along the way, maybe things were not that clear. I think we can now make it even more clearer in this program. So I think it's for everyone, be it a beginner or someone who has already started. So for beginner, we mean that we want to start by first exploring Python programming. Then now we are going to advance to the next level, whereby we are going to explore data science and data analytics libraries. I think I mentioned them yesterday. Libraries to do with numerical computation like NumPy. We have Pandas for data analysis. We have Matplotlib for data visualization. We have scikit-learn for machine learning. We even have some data visualization tools like Tableau Desktop and Power BI. So I think this course, on my opinion, it is mainly focused to cater for anyone who wants to join the data science and data analysis workspace. So if you want to be more clear, I think you can still follow our video on orientation. I think the video is already hosted on YouTube. So I would even urge you, maybe we only, I think it was hosted, it was uploaded 1 day ago. I think it was yesterday. So you can subscribe to our platform on YouTube, which is Jenga e-learning. And now you're able to find all the recordings that we are actually uploading on YouTube. So in case you want this link, so this is another, I think there is one for orientation. Let me look at it. So yeah, this one here, orientation. So is it this one? Yes, this is for orientation. So I'm going to share with you these links. You can actually subscribe to our channel to really appreciate that one. And then I'm very, very sure you're going to get all the contents that we'll be uploading, be it on our e-learning portal and also through the YouTube platform. So I want to share this one with you. I don't want to play it right now. You're going to play it on your own free time. If this is the first class you're joining, you don't have to worry much because through the orientation, all these questions have been answered in our orientation lesson. So that is the first link to YouTube for our orientation class. And also our yesterday's class that we introduced Python is already on YouTube. I think it's only an hour and 40 minutes. Just maybe you want to have some clarification of about what is programming. Why do we need Python for data science? Why is it really important? How do you start? So the link is already hosted on YouTube. And similarly, our class today will also be uploaded on YouTube today. So I think that is something I needed to mention before we proceed. So I've shared the two links. You can subscribe to our channel and also you can follow us through YouTube. Apart from that one, there are some quizzes that I shared, but I think we had some few challenges here and there for students. So one thing I want to mention here is that for this platform here, one thing that happens is that you cannot proceed. You cannot proceed to the next lesson if you have not completed the previous one. Like for example, for me, I have completed the first module, the second one, the third one. Now I'm starting the fourth module today. So this is what we were doing yesterday. I've even done the quizzes. So if you've not done the quizzes, I want us to be clear there. If you've not done the quizzes here, then you cannot start our today's lesson, okay? So you cannot start our today's lesson because it will be locked. Like you can even see clear here that I cannot go to what is a variable in programming if I don't understand the building block of programming languages. So that is actually what we are actually ensuring that you follow each and every lesson, because as you're going to notice, especially in programming classes, one lesson follows the other one, because now you have to know why you need to do why is Python programming important for data science. Then what follows next is, where do you write your Python? We mentioned about Jupyter notebooks. And then we also saw yesterday that Jupyter notebook is normally it's not easy to install it. So we mentioned about Google Colab. And then now you can do the quizzes to do with why Python for data science, what is Jupyter notebook, what is Google Colab. After finishing now with the quizzes, now today you are now able to unlock now the building blocks of programming that you want to start today. We want to talk about what is a variable. So these two are the nodes. These are the two nodes that we have. And then now we want to do our class practice starting from here. All these ones are actually class practices, okay? So without now further ado, in case you still have any question, just pass it on the chat. Then I'm definitely going to answer it. In case you have a question, I'm going to answer it on the chat. Therefore, let us now start now here by understanding the building blocks of programming. So I'm very aware someone might be behind. So I'm just giving like 2 minutes to ensure that you have actually completed the previous classes, if you have not, in the platform, so that now we are together to start on the building blocks of programming language. So I can give you like 2 minutes to do that one. And then definitely we start from 9:18 a.m. So please ensure that you've completed your previous classes. If you never did the quizzes, I don't know how you're going to now handle it. If you've not watched this recording, what you can do, you can just mark it as complete for now. You can just mark it as complete. You don't have to watch all of it right now, but just mark it as completed. And then now you go to the next module. If you've not watched the video, you're going to notice that now you're not able to access other components in this platform. So ensure that now you follow it in that order, okay? So even the video, you have to watch it. But if you understood everything, you can just forward it here very fast, and then you move to the next slide. So we're actually hosting these videos for you, both in the platform and through YouTube, so that now you can still follow up in case you have a question or something that you want to clarify. So it's 9:17, so I think we're remaining with a minute for anyone who wants to uh, complete the previous classes, so that today we start on Python programming, and specifically we are going to mention variables. But before we do that one, it is good for us to know what are the building blocks of any programming language. So we can finish up, then we start. I think it's already 9:18. Let me just add 1 more minute because I was still clarifying some issues. So let me just add 1 more minute, then we start. Yeah. Okay, so I think now we are ready to proceed. So just to have a recap of what we mentioned yesterday. Yesterday we saw that for us to write any Python program, we needed an environment, something that we are calling an integrated development environment. It's actually a software that you can go to the internet, download it, and use it to write your codes. One of the most famous IDE we have in the market currently is something like Visual Studio Code. I think we also have PyCharm, we have Sublime Text, we have Atom. But now specifically for data scientists, I mentioned a tool we call Jupyter Notebooks. So Jupyter Notebook, we saw that it is the mostly widely used tool for writing and documenting data science and data analytics projects. So now we saw that there is one disadvantage with Jupyter Notebooks. The main disadvantage of Jupyter Notebooks that we mentioned yesterday was that its installation is sometimes not easy, but if you can do it, it's okay. So if you want to install Jupyter Notebooks, you first need to install a software called Anaconda Navigator. Then from Anaconda Navigator, like I mentioned yesterday, you'll have to launch Jupyter Notebook, which is actually a lot of work, especially if you are coming from a different background, which is actually non-technical. So for that reason, we mentioned about Google Colab. And we said Google Colab looks this way, and it's actually like a cloud-based, it's actually a cloud-based Jupyter notebook. It's actually a cloud-based Jupyter notebook whereby you don't need to hassle on installing anything in your computer. So long as you have a Gmail account on your browser, you can now access the Google Colab. And we saw some of its advantages is that any code that you write on Google Colab, it's normally saved in your Google Drive, which is actually an advantage. And also with Google Colab, you can actually share your codes in like a PDF file or an HTML file. So we saw those some of the advantages of Google Colab. If you're not clear about them, I think you can still watch the videos we've mentioned about them in those classes. So for today, now I am assuming now you know where to write your code, and now you want to start. So if you want to start doing any programming language, then there are those building blocks that make up a programming language. Let's say today you want to start learning a programming language like C++, or you want to learn a programming language like Java. Like for our case here, we want to start learning Python. Then there are those building blocks that we'll have to follow so that now we understand each and every component that makes the programming language. So the first one that I normally like to start with is a variable. So the first thing we need to understand is what is a variable. So what we're going to notice at the end of our class today, we're going to understand that variables are just names that we assign data to them. Okay, so it allows you to store data during your programming. So you as a programmer, at any point you'll need data. The data that you need will be processed later. So where do you store this data that you have? The data that you have is actually stored in a variable. And to store data in a variable, it means that you just assign it a symbolic name. I think that is actually my main objective today. So to understand what are variables. Then from there, we need now to understand different types of data that you can handle within your programming projects. So which type of data can you deal with? We'll be talking about integers, we'll be talking about float, we'll be talking about strings, we have booleans, we even have collection like list, tuples, dictionary. So that is the next building block. So what I can mention is that you cannot do data types if you don't understand variables, okay? So that is actually the order that you follow. Now from data types, later we are going to talk about conditional statements. So conditional statement now will start allowing us to make decisions. in our programming projects. So conditional statement, as you can see, based on this documentation here, allows decision-making by executing specific blocks of code based on whether the condition is true or false. So that is something that is very, very important. And I can mention that you cannot do conditional statements if you don't understand various types of data that you can deal with in your programming project. Now, from there, we're going to talk about looping statements. And we are going to realize that looping statements are able to repeat an execution of a block of code until a specified condition is met. Yeah. So, for example, let's say you have a login system, and in that login, like even in your phone, normally we have these patterns. So these patterns, you are given like 5 trials. So those 5 trials are 5 iterations. The process actually looped 5 times until the point whereby you're going to get the right pattern. Okay, so we're going to talk about that one in more details in our subsequent classes. So from there now, it will now allow us now to start building some functions and using some modules. So we're going to notice that functions are basically reusable blocks of code that are mainly designed to perform specific tasks. Okay, for example, you can have a function to send an SMS to someone. You can have a function to encrypt data. You can have a function to clean data. You can have a function to read data from different sources. So now for you to effectively do this data science and data analytics project, we are going to explore function, which is actually very, very important. And modules, on the other hand, are actually files that contain related functions and variables that can be imported to other programs. A good example of a module is NumPy. NumPy is actually a module because it contains related function for numerical computation. Another good example of a module is Pandas. So Pandas contains functions that are related to data analysis. Talking about Matplotlib is still a module. So for you to clearly understand NumPy, if you want to understand Pandas, then this lesson will be very, very important for us here. Now you cannot do functions and modules if you've not done the first 4 building blocks here. You see that? That's actually the order that I wanted us to follow. And now as you do that one, these 5 blocks are the most basic building block for any programming language. You can actually build anything so long as you understand what are variables, what are data types, what are conditions, what are the looping statement, and how to build function, and how to work with modules. I think that is normally sufficient to build anything. But in this era that we are in, we normally have very complex tasks. Like you want to build a computer vision application, or you want to build a large language model like ChatGPT. So these are very complex tasks. And because of this complexity, we have something we call object-oriented programming. So we are going to notice later in our programming classes that OOP, it is basically a paradigm. So if I'm saying a paradigm, it is a programming style where everything is based on object and classes. So we are going to emphasize on some of the object-oriented programming principles like encapsulation, where we hide information, inheritance, polymorphism, and so on and so forth. So this is actually going to allow us now to handle complex tasks in our programming projects. Now from there, I think we will be actually in intermediate level Python by now doing OOP. Then later we are going to talk about what is exception handling, very, very important, especially if you want to detect and manage runtime errors. So I'm sure it might not be clear right now, but you're going to notice that a runtime error is an error that is caused by a user while using your program. For example, you have actually created a program that the user must only enter a text, okay? The user must only provide a text. What if the user provides a number? What would happen? You'll have to handle that exception. And then finally, in our programming classes, we are going to talk about how do you handle different files? How do you read files? How do you write files? This will be very, very crucial, especially in our data science classes, because we will want to read several files. Like you will want to read a file from your Excel document so that you can now perform the analysis, or you want to read files from CSV files. So for you to be able to read files from external sources, manipulate these files within a program, we'll actually talk about the file operation. And I'm very, very confident that if you have these 8 building blocks of programming, this is not only for Python, but any programming language, then it's actually that is sufficient enough for you to handle any project that you get. But now if you want, I think up to here, we can now say that you've actually entered into, this is actually the basic level from here up to here, that is the basic programming level. If you now proceed from here up to here, that is what we call the intermediate level programming. Now, if you want to move into expert level programming, I would highly advise you do aspects to do with, I think I can just mention it here, but you're going to introduce that course later. It's normally called data structures and algorithms, DSA. I think it's a course that we'll introduce at some point for those people who want to dive into expert level programming. Yeah. So up to here, we're actually teaching up to intermediate level Python programming because we feel this is actually sufficient enough for us to do any project in data science and data analysis. But if you want to handle more very complex tasks like game development, you want to do automation, at some point you'll have to dive into expert level programming, which I highly advise those people who are interested to do that one. They normally take data structures and algorithms. I think it's a course that we will introduce at some point if you feel that now you are okay with these blocks that we've mentioned here. So with that one in hand, we'll have some quizzes for you to define what do you mean by loop, what is a conditional statement, what is object-oriented programming, and so on and so forth. So now I want to start now with what is a variable. That is the first building block for learning any programming language. So if you've completed this one, just mark it as complete. And now we start here from what is a variable. So we just want to go in that order until we finish with file operation. So I think for today, we'll mainly focus on the first two. For today's class, we'll focus on variables and data types. Then in our subsequent classes, we'll be talking about conditional statements and looping. In the next class, I think function and modules, will just do it in like 2 classes because it's very important. We can now do object-oriented in 2 classes again because it's very advanced. And then the last 2, we can just do it in 1 class, okay? So most likely we are anticipating, but by the end of this month, we should be done with this Python programming intermediate level so that now we can dive into our important business, which is now data science and data analysis. So I hope I've answered those questions. Maybe you add, how are you going to start? So I think I've given you the roadmap that you want to follow. So now let's start by variables. So if you're okay with that one, mark it as complete. And then we go to what is a variable in programming. We will be doing some class practices just to understand variables and data types today. So let's go to the next one. In case you have a question, I hope you'll be passing it on the chat. So now that is the first one, variable. So I hope today, if you are able to understand a variable, then that will be a very, very good milestone now to unlock you now doing data types. So to start with now, the big question is, what is a variable? Because the first thing we have to learn. So we can actually say that a variable, I wanted us to be clear on this one. A variable is basically a symbolic name, okay? I think for someone whose portal is lagging, maybe you can contact someone on the WhatsApp group. I think he'll assist you on that one. So I was saying that a variable is a symbolic name that refers to a value stored in a computer memory. So a variable is actually a symbolic name that will refer to a value that is stored in a computer memory. Okay? So variables are mainly used to store data that can be manipulated throughout the program. Okay? So I think that one will make sense later as we proceed. So variables have different characteristics that I'll be referring all the time, especially in Python. Variables are dynamically typed. I think this is something very advanced. I think I'm going to talk about this as we do it practically. But you're going to see that if I'm saying that a variable is dynamically typed in Python, then it means that you do not need to declare the type of variable explicitly, because Python refers to the data based on the value that is assigned. I know this is not making sense right now, but we are going to demonstrate this one practically in our class practice here. So in Python, you don't need to declare variables. I think that is something you're going to see. But it's also good to say that variables in Python are case sensitive. So if you have a variable name like this one, name that starts with lowercase n, and another variable that is called name that starts with uppercase N, then these two names, these two symbolic names are different, okay? So now let's see how do you create a variable. This is very important. So we can say that for you to create a variable, simply assign a value to it using the equal sign operator. And this equal sign operator, it is actually what we call an assignment operator, okay? For example, this is what I'm talking about. I have data 5. This data 5 wants to be stored in my computer memory. So what I will have to do, I will have to give it a symbolic name. A good symbolic name could be something like X. And now this X is what we call a variable. And to demonstrate this one, we can actually say that 5 has been assigned to variable X, okay? I think that's what they are saying here, that assigns the integer 5 to the variable X. So now if you go back to our definition, a variable is basically a symbolic name, like this one here, that we can use to store any data. And for that one to happen, we normally use an equal sign, okay? So here we're now saying that I have assigned variable X value 5. Let me repeat. I have assigned variable X value 5. But I think it will make much more sense if we do it practically in our Google Colab, of which we're going to do in our next module. So I think I'll come back and refer to this one after now doing some few. So as much as a variable is basically any symbolic name, like this X, so this symbolic name must have some rules that will guide us on how do we create the best symbolic name to store any data, okay? So we actually come back here in our class practice and see that we have like, how many rules are these ones? We have like 4, okay? We have like 4. And please always remember to follow them if you really want to understand programming. The first rule that you're going to follow is that a variable name, this name X here, it must always start with a letter, either a letter that can be from A to Z, or lowercase a to Z, or it can start with an underscore. That is the first rule in programming. If you want to create any symbolic name that you want to store data, then it must start with a letter or an underscore. So, to be clear here is that a variable cannot start with a digit. You can never start a variable with a digit, and I will demonstrate that one in our class practice. The second rule is that the rest of the name, this is actually the starting name, okay? The rest of the name may contain letters, numbers, or underscore. The rest of the name, but you can only start with a letter or an underscore. That is something you're going to demonstrate in a few. Now, another thing that you'll have to remember, please remember this one. A variable cannot contain spaces. Please, this is actually one of the mostly where most people get errors. You can never start a variable with this. We cannot have a space in a variable, or you cannot have a special character. Like, for example, this X here, you cannot accompany it with any special character like $, percentage, because these characters have their own special meaning in our programming processes, okay? Finally, the last rule, before we now do the demonstration, is that there are those names. We will say that a variable is any symbolic name that we can use to store any value, okay? Please remember that one. Now, this name, we have those names that are reserved. This name, we have the names that are reserved, and you're going to see them in a short while, because they have a special meaning. A name like if have its own special meaning. A name like else have its own special meaning. A name like while. So these names cannot be used as variable names. And if you try, you're going to get an error. Please remember that one. I think we're going to demonstrate that one, then we'll come back here again. So we have three ways of variable naming convention. We have three ways of variable naming convention. The first naming convention we have in variable is what we call a snake case. And this is what is actually preferred in Python. A snake case naming convention is whereby words are separated by underscore, like user underscore name, first underscore. Let's say you want to say first name. You can actually say first underscore name. I'm going to demonstrate this one. It's very, very important. Other programming languages, a good example is JavaScript and Java, prefer camel casing. So camel casing is actually a naming convention where the first word is lowercase and the subsequent words are capitalized. A good example of that one is username. So this naming convention mainly comes when you actually have two words, user name, last name, first name, database connection. If you have these two names and you want to join them, snake case says that you can work with an underscore, ensuring that all these words are lowercase. As you can see here, they are lowercase. Camel casing suggests that these two words, the first word is actually lowercase, the word user is lowercase, but the next subsequent word, which is name, is capitalized. So if I'm saying capitalize, the first word starts with a capital letter here. And then finally, we also have a naming convention that is called uppercase, whereby it's often used in values that are constant. So a constant value is a value that will never change during your programming, throughout the program, a value that will never change. A good example of a constant value is pi. Pi is always 3.142. It will never change. So because it's a constant value, we normally give it this naming convention, whereby everything is now uppercase. Can you see that one? But we have values that change. Variables values normally change. Let's say we have the exchange rate. Today we can have our Kenyan to USD exchange rate is 134. Tomorrow it might be 130. Yesterday it was 129. So those values that are changed are not referred to as constant. Okay. So I think there are some few demonstrations that have been done here. I want us to skip this one for now because it will much confuse you, but we're going to come back to it. Let's see here. Okay, I think this one we're going to come back and look at them after we've done some few demonstrations. At what are the above named calls? So let me go back there because that is very important. Like I mentioned, we have 3 naming conventions. The first one is a snake case. A snake case, please remember, every name is lowercase, so long as the 2 names are separated with an underscore. And remember, they are lowercase. We don't have an uppercase anywhere. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate it in practically. For camel casing, which is preferred by other languages, the first name is always lowercase. The next one is uppercase. And for any constant value, you just work with that uppercase. Okay. So I think I'm going to demonstrate that one. We'll have to open Colab and do some demonstration. So let's mark this one as complete, but I think at some point we'll need to come back here and refer to some notes like here, like this note here. So in Python, you cannot declare a name without assignment. I'm going to demonstrate that one. You cannot declare a name without assignment. You cannot. In Python, that is in Python. Other languages like C, you can do it, but in Python, you cannot declare a name without assigning it a value. I think I mentioned it as one of the properties of Python. I think I've mentioned it somewhere here. No declaration here. For you to declare a variable, you must give it a value, okay? Other programming languages will allow you to do declaration, but Python, you'll have to assign it a value. But this is, in case it's not making sense to you, we are going to do a class practice so that now this one makes sense to you. So let's open our first class practice so that now we may answer a lot of questions that I hope you have. So in case you have a question, just pass it on the chat. I think I may answer it as we move along. So mark this one as complete, mark it as complete, and then we go to the next module. So what you are noticing is that you cannot open the next lesson if you've not completed the previous one. So that is actually how we designed this e-learning portal to ensure that you follow everything. So I think you'll contact someone on the classroom. Yes, sorry for that one. I was clearing my throat. So let's start with, I think this is actually theory-based, but it's good to know what is Python. So this is our first class practice. If you click on this link, just click on it. We just close these ones here because I had already opened them. So let's start with the first one. What is Python? This is very simple. Just to highlight what is Python. So like yesterday, I had mentioned about Jupyter Notebooks. I had created some notes to clearly explain what is Python programming, because some of us were having a lot of questions just to understand this language. So I actually saw that Python is an interpreted, high-level, general purpose. Oh, yes. So, yes, I can share the link with you. I think that's a good one. Let me just copy the link for you on the chat. But I hope you'll find time to have access to your portal. Sorry, so let me share it on the chat. Sorry for that one. I've shared it. I'll be sharing them on the chat in case you're not able to access it. So just click on it. Then you're going to land here. For anyone now who wants to understand clearly what is Python, it is an interpreted high-level general purpose programming language. I think it's something we were mentioning yesterday, interpreted in such a way that it interprets machine code from the source code. I don't want to go much into detail because it might confuse us, but yesterday someone was having a question like, why is it high level? I think you can start from here. We can actually say low-level languages have more direct control over operation than the computer perform. So machine code is the lowest level language which is performed. I think we'll clarify that one as well. But I think we can now mention about Python being general purpose. So Python is versatile. So it actually have quite a different range of application. You can use it for cybersecurity. You can use it for data science. You can use it for automation. You can use it for web development. So when I would say that Python is general purpose, then it have different set of application, not only limited to one application, okay? So properties of Python. Python is the most commonly used code in the world, and it's one of the popular ones. It has a very large community. It is well supported by external softwares and different IDE. You can even say Google Colab supporting Python, okay? I think Google Colab only support Python programming, okay? So it has a lot of functionalities. You can use it to do your plotting. You can use it to do your unit testing. You can use it to do your automatic document generation. This is actually what we are calling automation or generative AI. So it's relatively very easy to learn. I think based on my opinion, it is relatively quick to write the code because it's easy to learn. Now you can easily write the code. Normally, it's very slow. I think I mentioned this one yesterday because it's a high-level language. And then better performance can be achieved using specialized mode, which can allow interaction between. I think it's advanced. We are going to clarify in our more subsequent letters. So some of the features that you want to know about Python is readable. It is adaptive, it supports complex number, and so on and so forth. I think this is something we are going to clarify as we move to the next slide. But I think I prepared this one for you in case now you want to understand all the features about Python programming. So let's go to the next one, which is now the important one. I think I will have to go back. I will have to go back to my portal. I'll have to go back to my portal. I'll just mark it as complete. Mark it as complete. Then now we go to the first program in Python now, so that now from here, we can talk about variables. So now first program, I will share this one with you right away in the chat. Yes, here. So I want us to focus here now. So let me copy this one and paste it on the class. Breaking. Yes. There you go. So just click on. Yeah, so just click on it, then it should take you here to the first program that you write. So in this notebook, you'll actually be introduced to some series of simple Python command. And at some point, I'll be asking you to write some piece of code to achieve some particular outcome. So throughout this notebook, you'll find yourself with some extra time. So I want you to try out different variation of the exercise and see what you like. If the notebook starts with something that must be done in a particular way, try doing it in a different way and see what happens. So the first program we mentioned yesterday was the print statement. I have actually now compiled a note to explain what is the print statement. So the first command in programming is what we call the print statement. By writing print followed by parentheses. So parentheses are these brackets here. If you write print followed by this bracket, which you're calling parentheses, Python will print to the screen the value of the expression inside the parentheses. Okay? The Python will print the value or the expression inside the parentheses. So if you want to print text, like we saw yesterday, it must be inside either a single or a double quotation marks. So we will print multiple values within a single print statement by separating them with commas. So you can actually print multiple values so long as you separate it with a comma, okay? So if we place the name of a variable, the name of a variable will be printed. Now, this is actually what I'm saying. I want you to run this program first so that now we can now interpret the output. So if I run this program here, the first line of command, let's see, we used the print statement and we printed value 3. I think that's what we saw here. Okay. And remember yesterday we said that if you want to print numbers, you don't need quotation marks. Okay. On the next line of code here, we have actually printed some text. And because some text is a text that is made of sequence of characters, like I mentioned yesterday, you must have them in double or single quotation marks here. And I think that is actually what we saw here. Now the next one is the tricky one. Let's begin on that one. I have a variable called B, and this variable, I have assigned it value 4. Okay? Can you see? So this variable B, it is actually what we call a variable. So it's actually referring to value 4. So now if I want to print, I can even print a text like more text. This is actually one thing I'm printing. I give it a comma, and I also want to print the value that was stored in variable B. And that's actually what we are getting. More text was printed here, and then B was actually referring to value 4. I hope that one makes sense to you. Why do we need variables? I thought someone might ask me that question. Why do we need variables? Let's try to see these two scenarios. In the first case, I only printed 3, but the 3 that I printed doesn't have a memory. I can never refer back to it again. I can never refer back to it. But I'll always refer back to this 4 because it has a memory reference called B. So this B will always refer to the value that is 4. So this 4 have a memory reference compared to the first one here. So all the time, if you are dealing with data in programming, make sure that you store it in a variable like this one here, so that you can always refer to it here, okay? So if I want to print another 4, I can actually say here, B again, and let's say B again, and let's see what would happen. It's taking time. Can you see now? I can always refer to this 4. By calling B, I can always refer, or I can even say, I want to print B plus B. And let's see what I get. I'm getting 8. So I'm always referring to this value 4. I can even add a value like B, I add 4. And not 4, let me just say 6. I'm getting now 10. So remember, anytime you provide a value to a variable, which is very important, you can always refer to that value. Okay? And something you're noticing here that we never saw yesterday is that you can print multiple items within a print statement so long as you separate them with a comma. Like I have printed more text, which is a text here. As you can see, I have printed this B here, which is number 4. There's a comma. I've printed the other B, which is here. There's a comma. I've printed B plus B, which is 8. There's a comma. I've printed B plus 6, which is 10. There is a comma. And the list continues. I want to avoid this one because it might look confusing. But I hope up to there, it makes much more sense to say that now you can always refer to a value because this value have been stored in a symbolic name that will always refer to that name. Okay. Now to explain this one, I have a markdown to explain. Now notice how the output of the code is displayed below the cell in a Jupyter notebook. So outside a notebook, print statement a print statement in Python will commonly be printed to a terminal because run the script. So print statements are very useful for checking what variables within the code take. Okay. So now there is an exercise I want you to try. I should have hidden the code. I think I should have hidden the code. So there was an exercise here. I think the answer is already here. Now there was an exercise whereby you actually write some code which will actually print the phrase "Hello World." Another section which will actually write an integer of your choice, and another one which is actually have a negative value. Use 3 separate print statements. So the first one was to print the text "Hello World." So this is actually testing that anytime you're printing any text, make sure it is inside double quotation marks or single quotation marks. If you want to print any integer of your choice, then it must never have any quotation mark because it's a number, this is a text. And then here, if you want to print any negative value, you can still print it without a quotation mark because it's still considered as a number. A negative number is still an integer, okay? So I think if you run this one here, that is actually why you are getting the answers here. So this is actually a text. I've printed a text, I've printed 4, I've printed a negative value. Now the problem is I can never refer to this value again. I will never find them again. Why? Because they don't have a memory reference. I've not stored them in a variable so that I will always refer to them anytime I want to use them in my program. So for us to understand this one now, we can now start by setting a variable. So I've been mentioning that a key concept in any coding language is what we call a variable. So this is a way of labeling a piece of information with a name, okay, and storing it, allowing it to be later accessed, used, or altered using the name. For example, I have this value 1 assigned to variable A. So therefore, what this one means is that it creates a variable with the name A. So please remember, variables are on the left side, values are on the right side, okay? So there are different ways, there are different types of variables in Python, which you're actually going to learn in the future in these notebooks. So variable name don't need to be a single character. Please remember that one. Variable name don't need to be a single character, but must not contain a space. And the other restriction that I've mentioned in our previous notes that I have. So I think now this one makes a lot of sense. I have my favorite number is always 1. So anytime I want to refer to my favorite number, I will actually call this variable here, okay? My favorite fruit, it's banana. So anytime I want to refer to my favorite fruit, I will always refer to this variable name here. My favorite food is my favorite fruit. I want you to say that this variable as is being assigned to the value that is in this variable. So I want us to run this one and see what we get. And then now I can answer your question from up to there. So run this one here. So I know this is very confusing because we said yesterday that anytime you want to print a text, it must be inside double quotation marks. But this text that we are printing here is not a normal text. this is actually a variable name. So it's a variable name because it's actually referring to a value of 1. So it's actually a symbolic name that refers to a value 1, okay? The other one is a symbolic name that refers to the value bananas. So these bananas can also be referred here. Can you see? So this banana is referred here and is still being stored as the favorite food. That's why we're getting favorite fruit as bananas. Favorite food here are still banana because I have assigned my favorite fruit, which is banana, to be my favorite food, okay? And that's actually what we are getting. So let me answer your question before now we have a look at the exercise that we have here. So I think I saw a question before now checking up on this exercise that we have here. It's a very good question. Yeah, that's a good question. You're asking, is there a particular naming pattern for variables that I'd recommend for data science, considering we'll be dealing with related information? Yes, I'll be recommending a particular naming convention, and I've already even recommended it. I will always recommend you working with the snake case naming convention. And I think that's what is being done here. Can you see? This is actually what we call a snake case, okay? What happens here, please remember, what happens here is that Python will never allow you to have a space here. You cannot have a space in a variable. You see now problem starts here, okay? Problem starts there. You can never have a space there. And again, if you join these two words, it doesn't look better. I hope you can see it doesn't look better to join two words together. So you are limited to have a space and you are limited to join them. So now the only two remaining options is to either work with a snake case convention, whereby you are told just include an underscore here. That is what we call a snake case convention. Or camel casing, that is preferred by other languages. So if it's camel casing, then you should always remember to have something like that one, which is actually not preferred by Python for some reasons. So this is the naming convention that I would highly recommend, especially if you have two names. Favorite number is 1. Favorite fruit is bananas. And then let's continue. I hope I've answered it, but I think we're going to clarify it as we move forward. So there is an exercise. Maybe you can think about it. Now, because of time, we are being told you can try to write some code which uses variable in the code cell below. Then you're told to use print statement to periodically check the values in your variable. So it's very important to see that with a print statement, we can check a value that exists within a variable name, okay? So we are being told to create a variable with a word or a phrase, okay? Create a variable which is a negative integer of your choice. Create a variable which is a positive integer of your choice. Set the variable name which originally contained your word or a phrase to be equal to the positive integer and refer to the name of that one. I think just to, because of time, the task has already been done here. So we are told to create a variable called word and then containing a word or a phrase. So like I have a variable called word, and this variable, I want to assign it any phrase like the word software. I hope you can see that one. So the value is software. This value software, which is a word or a phrase, has been assigned to variable called word. So if you want to see the value that is stored in variable word, then you'll have to print. So just to print, we mean we want to output the value of the variable word. The next one, we've been told to create a variable called negative. It then contains a negative integer. So I've actually called it negative. I can call it negative. I can call it neg. No need to worry. so long as it refers to this value, and then I give it a negative value here. So now if I print negative, I should see the value that I stored in that variable neg. Okay. In the fifth one, we've been told to create a variable called positive, and then you should give it a positive integer. Positive, I've given it a positive integer, then I'm printing it here. I'll have to check. So I'll have to check word that contains its original value before changing its value. So I have a word called, so if I print word, it should print software. So now I want to take this variable and assign it another value of a positive integer. Now, if I print both of them, I should get the same answer. So now if I run the whole of this code cell, I hope now it should make sense to you. This is the first print statement. We printed software. That was okay. The next print statement, we printed -3. That is what we are seeing here. The third one, we printed positive, which is actually 5.2. That is what we are seeing right here. Now here, I have printed the word, which was software. Can you see? I have printed the word, which is software here. And then I have taken the word, which was software, and replaced it with the value, which is 5.2. Remember, variable POS, it's referring to value 5.2. So that value 5.2 that is being referred to here is being stored in variable word. So now if I print positive, I'm still getting 5.2 now. If I now print word, remember we had replaced the word with the value for the positive. I'm now still getting 5.2. I know that one might look any confusing, so you can ask any question before we talk about now mathematical operators. So any question up to there now before we talk about mathematical operators? So this is actually the word of variables. So let me have a look in the chat if I have a question before we proceed. I don't think there is any question. So now I'm ready to proceed to mathematical operators. So let's go there. So now the question becomes now here, you have stored a value in a variable, okay? Now what do you want to do with it? You cannot just store a value there and just be there. Like for example, I cannot just store -3 in a computer. It will just take my computer memory for nothing. What I'll have to do after storing a value in a variable, I'll have to do operations, what we normally call processing. Because if someone tells you to define a computer is actually a device that accepts input. So I'll give it an input like -3. It's stored in the memory. I want you to refer to it as a RAM, random access memory. This one will be stored to this one. Now from there, the computer has to process that value and provide an output. So for the purposes of processing a value, we have now some operators. And the first operators I wanted us to mention is mathematical operators. In some other words, we normally call them arithmetic operator. So if you look at the computer CPU, you have something called the arithmetic logic unit. So we can do arithmetic operations within our computers. So now we can even say that now there are many operators we can use in Python to start manipulating data in different ways. Yes, I kindly send the link. I'll do that one very fast. So we have different operators that we can use to manipulate data that we have stored inside our variables. Okay. So there are many operators we can use to manipulate data within our variable. So many work in similar way with mathematical equation. So the first operator we've mentioned is operator equal sign here, which sets the value of a variable on the left side to be equal to whatever is on the right side. This is the first one you've seen. So in this case, what is on the right side of the assignment operator, I think I can just have a look at this one. So the first operator, these are some of the basic arithmetic operator you can work with. The first one is plus, when you want to add numbers together. Another one is subtraction, when you want to do a subtraction operation. The other one is multiplication, where we use asterisk, like we saw yesterday. If you want to divide numbers, we normally work with the forward slash. We also have the three last remaining one, which is actually what we call a modulus. It's actually what we call a modulus. So a modulus returns the remainder of a number on the left side divided by the one on the right side. There is exponential operation, whereby it raises the number to a certain power, and then there is the floor operation, whereby it divides the number on the left of the operator by the number of the right of on the right of the operator, and then round off the result down to the nearest integer. So let's demonstrate that one with now the concept of variables. So for us to clearly understand what's happening here, I will have to run this one first. Perfect. Now let's see what happens. I have variable A, which refers to a value 10. Okay. I have variable B, which refers to value 3. So now if I want to do some operations to this variable, I can now perform some arithmetics. So if I want to print A plus B, remember A is referring to 10, B is referring to 3. So if I add them up, I get 13. That is an operation. So this is actually an output. This was the input. This was the input. This was the process. This is the output here. Okay. Then from there, I have 10 minus 3, I get 7. Remember? So still, I can always refer to them. I don't have to call them again. I just refer to them by their symbolic names. I have A times B, that is 10 times 3, that is 30. I hope you can see. I have A divided by B, so I remain 10. You divide by 3, you get 3.33. Now, division. After division, now the modulus. This is very important. The modulus here. So like remember, the modulus returns the remainder. For example, if I'm saying I take 10, I divide it by 3, the remainder will be 1. Remember, can you see that one here? The remainder will be 1. For example, if I take 100, I divide it by 30, the remainder will be 10. I can even do it that one here. If I print 100 modulus 30. So it's like you're taking 100, you're dividing it by 30, and now you want to get the remainder. So the remainder should be 10 right here. Only that I can never refer to these values because I've not stored them in a variable. Then from there we have exponential operation. Exponential operation is the power. So if I say 10 exponential 3, I mean that I want to multiply 10 times 10 times 10. I want to multiply 10 3 times. Okay? So in other words, this is what is happening. So 10 exponential 3 means that you want to multiply 10 3 times. So it will be 10 times 10 times 10. Sorry. Times 10, like that one. So it's actually the same as this one here, exponential 3. So it's actually giving us 1,000. I hope you can see it here, 1,000. So A exponential B is 1,000. It means that 10, you multiply it 3 times, you get 1,000. And then finally, the floor division operation. The floor division operation is the one that we use double forward slash. What happens here is that I will take 10, I will divide it by 3, and then I will round it off to the nearest integer. So instead of me returning 3.3, I'll just return 3 because I'll just do the rounding off to avoid the decimal places that is being generated here. And that is actually what we call the flow division operation. So these are the 7, how many are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, they are normally 7. So these are the 7 arithmetic operations that you can perform, especially if you are dealing with numerical values. So you can do addition, you can do subtraction, you can do multiplication, you can do division. The first 4, I hope they make sense to you. Now you can even return the remainder by talking about the modulus. You can perform exponential, whereby you are raising a number to a certain power, like 10 to the power of 3. And then finally, flow division operation is whereby you round off to the nearest integer after performing the division operation. So any question from there? So now, just to finalize before you ask any question, is that note that we have not changed any value of A and B. We have actually performed some operation to them. They actually, we've not changed them here, but we have manipulated them here using the mathematics arithmetic operation. So in this example above, the values of the code inside the parentheses of each print statement is evaluated without changing the value of A or B. And that evaluation is what is being printed. I hope that will make sense to you. Are you there? So I want to skip this order operation. Order of operation talks about the board mass. I think it's the board mass. The board mass, so if you understand the board mass, you normally start from multiplication, you go to division, you go to flow, you go to modulus, and so on and so forth. So I think that is board mass. Yeah. So that from there, I think there is an exercise that we have here. There is an exercise that we have here. Yeah, so over your free time, you can just check it out. So we have 2 variables here. We have a cube. Was it a cube? So we have the side of the cube is 3. The side length is 3. The number of cubes are 5. So I think if you want to see now the operations, I think now you can call them here. So I think this is actually something you're going to try them out. Then I think they're being explained here. So from there now we can talk about comments. I think there's someone who asked about what are comments. They are very important in any programming language because just in a short while we can actually say that comments are very important component of a good piece of code because comments are piece of text in a source code file which are not processed by the Python interpreter when we run the code. In Python, anytime you want to write a comment, you normally start with a hash symbol and the code will be ignored. So for example, we are being told here that anytime you want to write a piece of code that is normally ignored by the program, we call them a comment. And they are mainly used to provide readability, okay? So for example here, I want to say here that here I set an important variable A. So X is equals to 4. So I've now commented that one. It's just a piece of text that is trying to explain what I'm doing here. So if I never provided this hash here, then that is a valid code, and I hope you can see it provides some errors. So now if you want to explain your programs, you normally start with hash symbols here, provide a comment, like this one here, okay? So comments allow you or someone else looking at your code to quickly understand what you're doing. And this makes your code much easier and to maintain and debug. So please remember, a comment is just a piece of code that will be ignored. If I never provided this hash here and I run this code, I will get some errors because my program is trying to understand what this one means. So what this one means is that it's just a piece of text that want to explain what I'm doing here. So I have to start here with an hash symbol. So I just give it an hash symbol here, like that one. And now it will be ignored, and then I'll get my output very fast here. Now I'm getting 4. So it will allow you to quickly. So yes, that's a very good question. What if you use HTML comments in Python? They'll not work. Each programming languages have their own comment. For Python, you normally start with hash. I think the HTML one is very different from Python. For JavaScript, I think we normally go with 2 / with that one. Similar for C++ and the rest, but for Python, you'll have to start with hash. Okay. So you're going to notice that every programming languages have their own way of setting their comments because they are mainly the pieces of code that are ignored during program execution. So with that one, yeah, so you're welcome. I wanted us now to go to our main business today. We cannot, in Python, we don't have multi-line comments. In Python, you don't have multi-line comments. If you want a multi-line comment, you just have to start with hash that way. So you cannot work with the JavaScript comments here. So let's say I have 2-line comment. I can just demonstrate that one here very fast. I can say this is the first line of my comment. If I have another line, I'll just have to start with the hash again. Then I can now say, this is another line of comment. This is another line of comment, like that one. So if I want a multi-line comment, I don't have any other alternative but to just start them with hash all the time. I hope I've answered that one. Now we finalize with the last notebook that I shared with you to explain now variables and assignments. So any question there? I think I'll have to go back and mark it as complete. Okay, what's happening? I'll have to go back and mark it as complete. Then I'll go to the next one, which is now the class practice that is talking about. It's the last one that's talking about. Yes, I think I'll have to mark it as complete before I go to the next one. Variables and assignments in more detail. So I think now this one will be very, very fast. I will open it up. I think what I'll have to do, I'll just copy. I don't want to be going back and forth. Just paste it here. Then similarly, for those people who don't have the link, I'm also sharing it here. I'll share that one. So this is the last one we have today. Now to clearly explain variables and assignment. So now to clearly understand variables today in more detailed context, we can say that in all programming languages, all of them, a variable is a piece of information that is labeled with a name in a source code, which allows you to read from and access it. So we had mentioned some of the rules. A variable must start with a letter or an underscore. A variable can only contain alphanumeric characters and underscore characters here. You cannot have special characters like underscore, not underscore, but dollar sign, art symbols, and the rest. So we will also see that variables are case sensitive. So if I have a variable called x1, which is this lowercase and this uppercase, these are two different variable names. And we have those reserved words that we can use as variable name. So for Python 3, we have all these ones are the reserved word and except, lambda, with, as, finally, while, aside, false, all these are actually reserved words. So if I'm talking about the reserved words, these are words that have special meaning in our program. So unfortunately, in most places you write codes, these reserved words are highlighted with a different color and they actually restricted keyword. Okay, so now I was talking about assigning variables. Please, let's now take our attention here. This is very, very important to say that to use a variable, it must be assigned first. If you don't do that one, if it's not then assigned, when you try to use it, Python will recognize that it is a registered variable and an error will be created and the code will stop running. This is what I mean. This is what I mean, okay? This is what I mean. Like this program here, I wanted to print variable here. And remember, I'm not sure whether we have multi-line comments in Python. I'm not sure whether we have multi-line comments in Python. But I think so long as you have the hashes, then you can create the multi-line comments. So like I was talking about here in variable, this is very important to mention. I want to print variable A, and remember, this other two statements will never be reached because my code will stop running because I've not seen where you've actually assigned A earlier. You have to assign A first before you print it. So if I run this code, we are going to get an error. Let's just run it very fast, then you see an error. You see there is an error. And a good error is actually telling us that the name A that you're trying to print is not defined. You've not defined the variable. So these two lines of code will never be reached. Okay? So if I were to print A, then I'll have to do it here. Let me remove it here, Control X, and then I put it here, Control V, like that one. So now if I run this one, now this one would work because the first thing I did is that I created variable A and assigned it 1. Now if I print A, there is a memory reference to A, which is now 1. Now this actually works, this one works now. But if you now start by printing A, like this one here, remember A has not been defined. Even if you hover your mouse here, even if you hover it here, like this one, you are being told, I'm trying to hover. We are being told that A is not defined. A is not defined because we've not defined it earlier. So please remember, anytime you want to use a variable, you will have to first define it like this one, so that now you can print it or you can use it anywhere else in your program. Okay, so now this one, to correct this code, this should have been here. It should have been here. That one. Okay, this should have been here. This should have been here. So if you run this one, I think it's worked. But now if I try to print another variable, like if I say I want to print A plus B, remember I've already defined A. A is 1. I've already defined A is 1, but I've not defined B. So if I run this code, I'll be told that variable B is not defined unless I define its value here. So I can even say B is equals to, let's say, 3. So that if I run this one here, I should get my expression as 4, okay? So now that is actually what this piece of code is trying to say. It's giving us a very useful error message telling us that it doesn't know where the name A comes from. This is because we haven't defined it before the print statement. So in Python, variables may be defined by assigning them value using the operator equal sign, like I mentioned. So please remember that this operator does not behave as an equal sign. Instead, it means that calculate the value on the right hand side, and then save it to the value on the left hand side. So this means that the following Python command is invalid. So you cannot interchange them here. You cannot start with the value on the right side and variable on the left side. On the value on the left side, variable on the right side. It must be variable on the right side, on the left side, sorry, here, and then value on the right side. Yeah, so I think these are actually more examples of variables. I have a variable called turnips. So if I print the variable turnips, I'm going to get turnips here. Then I have a variable called 4. If I print 4, I'm going to get 4. So you can do what we call a reassignment operation. Initially, the name variable, add a value of turnips that I printed. Then I took the same name and assigned it 4. Now it gets a new value. So this is actually what we call reassignment. So any question up to there? The thing now, these data types is actually what we'll actually start from tomorrow, where we're going to talk about different types of data that you can interact in your program. But if you have time, you can actually go through this notebook and now explore different data types that we have. But I think up to variable, we can now reach up to here. Up to here. Up to here. So now what this one means that when a new value is assigned to a variable, it no longer refers to the previously referenced value. So in many cases, the value is actually lost. What this one means is that initially this variable stored the name turnips, and if you printed, it actually provided the name turnips. Now, if you take the variable and assign it a different value, this one here would be lost, okay? This one here would be lost. I think I hope that is okay now. And now I hope now we understand what are variables. So in our tomorrow's class, based on the outline that I provided here, the building blocks, we are going now to dwell more with now data types here. We're going to talk about integers, we're going to talk about floats, we're going to talk about strings, we're going to talk about booleans, and so on and so forth. So with that one now, let me see some of the questions you have. And then, is it? I think I saw a suggestion somewhere. Yeah, so Martin Onyango, you're actually saying that it's true. You're actually saying that we might have multi-line comments in Python where we can use 3 single quotes to open multi-line comments and close the 3 as well. It's okay, but what I want to clarify with that one, which is true, what I want to clarify with that one is that, I don't know where I can have it. I think I can have it here. The 3 quotation marks are normally used by strings. And I think the strings that you're talking about is what you're going to learn tomorrow. So whereby you can have a string like this one, We can have a single sentence, single line. Let me just say single line. Single line. In strings, we will be using, we can say this is a single line string. But if you're not making sense, we're going to clarify now this one tomorrow. This is a single line string where we use what does it mean? Where we use double quotation marks, okay? But sometimes you might want to have multi-line string, multi-line string. And I think this is what I'm talking about. So this is a multi-line, because it's actually starting from here. I think I can put it here. I like this one. So you can see this is a multi-line string. So in that case, that is actually where we are using either double quotation marks or triple quotation marks. But as you can clearly see here, this is not actually a comment. So if you want to notice a comment in any program, they are normally provided with a certain color, like this one here. Now you can say, this is a comment. This is actually a comment. So I've actually never noticed whether we have a multi-line comment in Python, but I think if you can go with this one, then I think it works. But I think the three quotation marks refers to a multi-line string, whereby you have a sentence that have multiple lines here, okay? Like that one. But I think this is something we are going to clarify in our data types classes. I just wanted to demonstrate to see whether maybe it might make more sense. Just wanted to clarify, but I think it's something we're going to clarify in our data type classes, which now starts tomorrow. Yes, the name of our YouTube channel, I think I can have it here for you. The name of our YouTube channel is Jenga e-Learning. Jenga e-Learning. So I would urge you to subscribe for getting the latest updates. Like for this class that we are having right now, it's already being recorded, and we are going to upload it in our Jenga e-Learning. I think it's very, very new. It was created probably yesterday. We already have 3 subscribers, if I'm not wrong. We only have like 3 subscribers only. So you can just search for Jenga e-Learning here, and then you're going to find it on YouTube. So you're always going to find all this information through the YouTube channel that we have. Let me see again. While defining a variable, Doris, you're also asking, can we use, for example, yes, we can use that one. I had avoided it for some reason, but I think I can mention it here. Let's say we have A is equals to 10, that one. And then I also have B is equals to 20. So you see, this is actually a lot of lines of code. So this one can also be written as, so I can actually have it as a comment. We can also rewrite that piece of code whereby you can say, I have 2 variables here. I have variable A, comma, I also have variable B, okay? And these 2 variables, the value for A is 10, and the value for B is 20. I wanted to avoid it because it normally comes with some confusion, but if you can understand that we have variable A, which has stored 10, we have variable B, which have stored 20. Now we can say that this variable A, its value is 10. This variable B, its value is 20. Let's try to print the 2 and see whether we are getting the 2. So if I run this one here, remember we're going to see that A has stored 10, B has stored 20. So that is a scenario whereby now we can work with the comma A, comma B. A, comma B, 10 refers to A, 20 refers to B. I hope I've answered that one. Now, I hope Doris, you're okay there. So I've provided the link for the YouTube channel. I'm not sure why you cannot find it. I'm not sure why you cannot find it. You cannot find the channel, or what can you not find? So if you just go to YouTube and search for Jenga e-learning here, just search for Jenga e-learning. Then you're going to find these two videos that we have. There's one here. So these are our videos. If you open one of them, this was our orientation session, and this was our Python introduction, which we did yesterday. So now you can find it and subscribe to our YouTube channels, like this one here. I can see already we even have 11 subscribers, so thank you for that one. So any other question, so that now tomorrow we now proceed to data types. So if you want to learn it on your own free pace, then I normally recommend you following this roadmap here. That because it's actually the roadmap that we are going to follow. We're going to start with variables. We mentioned data types. At some point, we are going to do conditional statements. We're going to do looping. We do functions. We talk about object-oriented programming. We're going to talk about exception handling. And then finally, we're going to do some file operations. Any questions up to there? Any question up to there? So if there is no question, I can say there's no any other question. Let me just confirm. No. Then I think we can now call it a day for today. For those who are joining us in the evening classes, we're going to start from 7:30. I'll provide some. Yes, I forgot to mention now. We have actually set the quiz. We'll have to score 100% to pass all the quizzes. Yesterday, we had a challenge whereby it was actually allowing some people to pass without getting 100% score. But right now, for all these quizzes that you have, you'll have to score 100% so that you pass to the next level. So they are not that difficult. They are actually quizzes that will just it's actually something like a reminder to see what we've covered for every lesson. So today I'm going to upload some quizzes to do with variables so that you can try them out and see whether you've understood something today. So if you don't get 100%, then you'll have to do a repetition. Maybe you can just do a repetition. You just repeat the quiz. Maybe by going through the notes, maybe there's something you didn't understand, so you can go back to the notes, read something about it, then you try it again until you get 100%. I don't think they are very hard quizzes. They are mainly focused on what we are learning, and I will not be providing a lot of them. I'll just be actually, so like this one, sorry, where is it? Like this one here. So you'll have to score 100 for this. So we're going to do that one later in our subsequent lessons. But I think these are introductory ones. So, and there are not a lot of quizzes. So that's why we opted for 100%, just to see whether you are understanding our introductory classes, so that now you can be advancing to the next level. But we'll negotiate that one later, based on how people are performing. Just want to see whether people are getting what you're mentioning here. So in that one, there are some codes that I had promised I would share with you. I think I will clarify with the technical guy and see what would happen there, but I don't think you can reach the 10 attempts. But I think I will clarify and see what would happen there. I will provide the communication, I think, in our next class. So this one, I can now mark it as complete. And then he had now provided some codes that you can try out on your own free time. Like this is actually a code that you can just copy. And just open a new Colab. You can just open Google Colab, and then you try out this code just to give you some inspiration of what we are actually going to build in our subsequent classes. So if you're here, then let's this one here. So you can make sure you give it a name. You can just call it inspirational quotes. Yeah, so just to test that you have actually understood how to use the Jupyter Notebook environment, you can provide a markdown. Then what you do, you just copy this code here and you paste it in a text cell just to test you understand what is a code cell. And then you run the code. So anytime you run this program, as you saw yesterday in our evening classes, it was actually providing some words on every, I think there's something I've done wrong here. There's something I've done wrong, let me see. What happening? Yeah. I think that should have been a comment. It was not being ignored. I think there is an issue here. Okay, let me have a look at it again. Probably I uploaded a wrong code. Copy this one again. See whether I can see where the problem is. I'm sorry, not there. I think here. Let me see, then you paste it here. Looks like there is a problem here, so I'll just have to remove this one, and then I just run it. Oh yeah. I think I've understood what's happening. I have understood what's happening. This will be a challenge for us. So please remember to replace these ones. So remember to replace these ones, and I think they are actually in a lot of context. So I think I'll have to replace this code because the problem we are getting is that Python uses. Let's show you what is happening. Control. What is happening here is that you should actually provide this kind of quotation marks. This is the one we need. This is the one, not the other ones. Like that one. Even this one, this is a problem because we should provide these ones here, like these ones here. So I'll have to change that code so that now you get the right one. Even this one here is a problem because the quotation mark you have is these ones and that one. But I think I'll fix it so that now you can try it on your own free time. So this was a code that we tested yesterday, and it was sending some inspirational quotes anytime you run it. So if you want to demonstrate that one, I think I can open it up here. So what the code was supposed to do, actually was that anytime you run it, I think it's this one here. It was this one here. So it was supposed to be this one here. Let me just use this one here. So it's supposed to be this one here. Yeah, so it's supposed to be this one here. So it's not this one. Now, So anytime I run it, it's normally sending some inspirational quote here. So I'm going to replace the code that I have there with this one here, so that now it works for you. So is that what I want to call it a day? It's already 11. So I would urge you to do the quizzes that I will upload today on the classroom, so that you can actually practice your knowledge on variables. Then tomorrow we start on data types. That's why this topic was Python programming, where we are mentioning variables. So tomorrow we're going to create another one where we'll actually be exploring data types. So if you don't have any other question up to there for today, I wish to call it a day. We meet tomorrow from 9. And for those who are joining us at 7 p.m., I think we're going from 7:30 p.m. See you then. So have a nice day and bye-bye.